started? Oops.
Think so.
All right.
Yep, we're good.
Okay. We'll call to order. It is 6:01 p.m. on Thursday, April the 9th, 2026. This is the Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Committee. Roll call. Dorothy Hill.
Isabel Sanford.
Neil Murray.
Kenny Burke.
We have Luke Murray, our
Murray.
staff liaison. Okay, approval of minutes. We had February and March, and I'm sorry that I sent them out so late. But I have copies here if anybody needs to take a look at them.
I read them online, motion to approve.
Read them online, motion seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
That's February and March together. Correspondence and public comment. Did anybody have any, anything they want to report to the committee?
If we could bring up as correspondent public comment, the item that you shared with me in the last
Sure.
24 hours, in which it's a group that is associated with the
It's
Block Island Bike Riders or Bike Path Association and their outreach to a state agency, and I've got to route out which state agency they're dealing with in recommendations for cycling improvements and connectivity in South County. And they mentioned reaching out to
Yeah.
this.
Yeah,
this
they,
committee.
this is the Charlestown Block Island Sound
Oh, okay.
Bike Committee. I'm not sure if that's the full name. But there's a bikeway, Rhode Island bikeway guide or bicycle guide. And they're getting ready to update it. And I think this is maybe 10 years ago was the old copy. I'm not sure who is doing this. I don't know if it's I'm guessing it's a state agency, but I'm not 100% sure. But anyway,
The
Neil
outreach
is
she
gonna.
had was to Colby O'Hanley at Rhode Island DOT.
Okay,
So I will reach out to see what contributions we can make
yeah,
to
just
that update.
yeah, just see if there's anything. Certainly, we probably have some. I don't think they may not have the connector from South County Commons or URI on their guide to the bike path. So we want to make sure that those things are, are included. But thanks for taking that on. I heard from Council Member Jay Wedgemont, and he is going to be here probably in about 15 minutes. So we'll go over some of the escape plan and his thoughts on that. I also heard from Josh. Sorry, I'm blanking on his last name right now, but
Saunders?
no, he was one of the guys that was came before the council about biking after dark. But anyway, he wrote me a very nice, thorough, long email about the conditions of the sidewalks. And of course, this winter was very different, very unusual. But he is somebody that does not have a car. And so he uses the sidewalks, and he had a really hard time getting around. And just wanted to find out if we'd included it in our discussions. We kind of did the last meeting, and wanted to find out what we can do going forward. And that I think that's something that maybe we can discuss as far as getting folks together, both from the town and state, and maybe Parks and Rec, because they do the bike path, and just kind of come up with a plan for next winter. And it's maybe we can help with some kind of outreach or educational, just to inform the public of what the expectation is for them as far as clearing sidewalks that are private. So I don't know what the feeling is. Has the town talked about that, or going forward for next year? I know they're probably going to wait until in the fall, but it's
Specific to what? What's the question?
well, what what is the plan for next winter? We had such a horrible time this year, and I kind of feel like we were a little bit late in getting the word out to people. I think people, not all residents may know that it's their responsibility until they get a notice.
Well, I would push back a little on that.
Okay.
We had a pretty strong social media campaign, and we had put out, I mean, this is not new, right?
Right.
We have had a few years with lower snow,
Right.
but we did a big push, and we issued, I think, over 90 violations,
Okay.
and we were out and enforcing as much as we could. That said, we had obviously the biggest snowstorm we've had in 50 years. So
Right.
that clearly, it took us a week even to get to the sidewalks that we even needed to maintain, never mind. We were trying to give people latitude. You know, quite frankly, it was just too much snow for some people to handle. And
Yeah.
even if they had the ability or, you know, I say physical ability. So, you know, I think we're always open to suggestions to do better. But I know what we did, and
Yeah.
it was substantial. So if there's specific targeted areas or there's feedback that he has that he wants to provide to us
Okay.
and has suggestions of how we may improve, as opposed to just kind of a blanket, you know, what could have done better.
Yeah.
Well, I always say, in what way? Like, you know, make a suggestion. Like, do you feel like you didn't see it on social media? Do you feel like we could push it out in other ways? But this is a, you know, kind of a seasoned ordinance by this point, and we get quite a few filed exemptions
Okay.
on the ordinance. There's always going to be people who either move into town or just never had to deal with this.
Okay.
That we're going to deal with that are just either not doing it or whatever.
Yeah.
So,
I-
But
Is
open-
there any, like for the state, clearing the state roads and then pushing the snow up onto the sidewalk? And granted, I know you had to get the roads clear, but is there anything requiring the state to clear those sidewalks along state roads?
So the way the law sits right now, and they're every year there's a new bill trying to strip it. It may be successful this year. The towns are responsible for the sidewalks.
Right.
That includes both just ongoing maintenance as far as clearing snow, but also the, you know, patch, repair, all of that. That's a big contentious thing throughout the state. The legislation seems to be getting some traction this year, so that may, but we have no control over that. They push the snow and we've got to
Right.
clear it, and that's our responsibility.
Okay, even if they throw it up onto the sidewalk, it's still the
Yeah,
town's, okay.
It's, you know, we have zero control over that. It's as frustrating for us as it is for any individual in town. We just try to play nice and work well together as much as we can.
Yeah,
But again, you know, this was a pretty atypical year. You know, I don't want to just throw it out as far as that, but that one storm was not our standard
yeah,
measuring stick, I think. You know, what I'm more concerned about is the 3 to 6 inch storms,
yeah,
where if people aren't clearing, that's a reasonable amount of snow. That could be expected for a typical clearing.
Yeah.
So
and it just stayed for so long too, so,
it did, you know, unequivocally. So
Okay,
I think there's still probably snow hanging around somewhere. So.
yeah.
Well, that storm too was preceded
Bye.
earlier by a 1 foot storm, and then by a 2 foot storm, and then by a
Yeah.
3 foot storm. So there were smaller ones in the year, but I think what the request here is, now, social media platforms go as far as they go. Is there the ability for the town to have the South County Independent, again, not as wide distributed, have an interview about the issue beforehand, or are there other means to engage it could be multifaceted, low volume as far as work for the city, the town, to find those alternatives to get the announcements out?
Yeah, I'm not opposed to that. We've done that, but I'm not opposed. You know, I'll bring it back to the team and how we can do better. But yeah, you're right. We try to get all means out. What we're not going to do is start sending out postcards, things like that, because we would only do that. Like we did that for the rental registry when we launched it.
Right,
But you just, that stuff has a certain amount of effect, and then it goes away. So, you know, it's also expensive. So
Yeah.
unless the council says, hey, we really think this one thing is important enough to start shipping out postcards at a few $1,000s,
yeah,
you know, that's probably not going to happen. But yeah, we can certainly always get better at social media. Interviews are free, press releases, You know, honestly, there's some responsibility also on the civic side to become aware.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's
Right.
just the case. Like no matter how much we put it in front of people, or push it, you know, until they get a violation, that's usually what perks them up and says, "Oh, I didn't know."
In the summertime, when there are water use restrictions, does the town put up the signs, or does the water company put up the notifications about restrictions?
So we push out, it's a combined effort. So Veolia communicates with us, we push out a lot of the communications on our end, but they also update their website, and it's kind of a combined effort there.
I think of it somewhere along Narrow River there. Sometimes I see the sign, water restrictions, on the roadside at key intersections. If that would be a wintertime thing for key intersections saying sidewalk clearance is required.
Yeah, that might be.
Along those
Route
lines, it's a
1.
low volume, high visibility.
Yeah, on Route 1, coming into, coming south, where they usually have the water restriction signs. That's a great idea.
So I'm just thinking of
Just,
easier to execute plans to
you
make it
know
more
there's a
civic
storm
awareness.
coming, put the sign out there and remind
Or
everybody.
beginning of season,
Yeah.
because you don't want somebody scrambling when you're prepping for the storm, but beginning of season and then.
Okay. All right.
Luke, we'll continue to follow up on this. I know we're not going to solve anything
No,
now,
but I
but
just
it's.
wanted
Yeah, I mean, I
bring it up.
appreciate
It's
the input.
concepts.
I would just go back to this all emanated from
Right.
Josh, right?
Right.
Always open to feedback.
Yeah.
Again, the one thing I would guide him on is, one, certainly come to us to provide
Right.
that feedback. But two, just ideas like that are helpful, right? Here's an idea that I
Yeah.
think may work. We can take it or leave it, but it's specific. You know, what we can't do, we get a lot, as you can imagine, we get hundreds of comments throughout the year.
Right.
Thousands. And so similar, right?
Mhm.
Well, you need to do better at notification. Well, in what way? What would have been the thing that would have gotten to you? You know, because some people are like, well, I don't read the paper. Well, I don't do social media.
Yeah.
Well, beyond me plastering it to your front
Yeah.
door,
Mhm.
you know, so like that's the helpful things
Yeah.
that we're looking for.
Yeah, that's a good idea, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then the other correspondence, just back and forth with Teresa Tanzi, Representative Tanzi, on the bike mobility plan. She's once again introduced $25 million bond to go before the citizens of Rhode Island to vote on. So this is saying, yes, we want this, want to vote on the bond referendum. So anyway, that's something that I guess, let's see, is actually further down in our discussion, but I will work on a letter. I think I wrote one once before. I'll just regurgitate that for the town council and asking them to support it. And then if there is an opportunity for testimony, if
does-
anybody wants
Does
to.
it have a companion bill? Do you know if leadership is supporting it, or the governor?
Yeah, I don't know.
It'd be important.
Yeah.
Before I sign on to it.
Okay,
I mean, it's a good philosophical
Mm-hmm.
tact, right?
yeah.
I looked at it and I did not see a companion bill.
Would it be on that bill? It'd be two of them.
No, it wouldn't be, it would be, the Senate would have a bill that was similar to it.
Okay,
You have to pass both. If you go down that lane,
Okay.
just sent your advisory to council.
Right.
One of the things that you can advise them on if you really want to support this
Yeah.
is, if you want to have I'm sure she has a template resolution that can
Mhm.
come from councils, but this would be something that you bring to the council and say, hey, we'd like you to support this. Would you consider passing this resolution, putting it up to the state?
okay.
And although I did not see a companion bill, doesn't mean that there is not one. And it may take a couple of years for this bill to go through.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well. Alrighty. Okay, anything else, communication-wise? Alrighty, you're up, Luke. Staff report.
All right. Yeah. So one thing I did want to make you aware of is, as you know, Safe Streets for All is coming up in May. Deadline, I think, is May 26th, if I recall. It's going to come quick. As I talked before, we do plan on submitting for Main Street. However, I attended a session yesterday through Federal Highway about the SS4A. And one of the things I noticed is a lot of the projects that have seemed to have been successful, it's not a cost factor. So they're giving out 14 million, 20 million, they're giving out some big projects. But a lot of them have also a diversity throughout the community, like implementing multiple parts of the action plan or having integrated pilot projects, or, like while they'll have maybe one main focus, they also have other projects. So I had a meeting with Bowman today, who was the ones who assisted with the application last time, Eric Weiss, Ray and Randy, who worked on the action plan. And I said, well, what if we go in and do Main Street, but in addition, take some of our top priorities off our implementation list, which also fits with the goals of this group, which you guys have, said, hey, what happens to these other projects? So Salt Pond and Kenyon and Kersey Road. One project that I'm keen on is, since we already have a sidewalk design, almost 100% for Kersey Road, putting that in, along with the intersections both at Kersey and Kingston Road on one side, and then Kersey and North Road on the other. So like that stretch. So because a lot of those projects were our top sort of vote getters as far as the action plan, both based on the data and sort of what we see as a priority in town. So I've talked to them about that. They're looking at that. I asked Rich to send over the plans for Kersey. The idea would be we have a more blended approach of saying, yes, we want to do Main Street, whatever, 5 to 6 million there, but we'd also like to go for a few $1 million to do other. That would be broader throughout time, including there was one on Ministerial and I think Tucker, Matunic and Cards Pond Road. So there was a few other projects in there that are kind of, so having a more blended approach. So they're looking at that. They're supposed to get me a proposal to integrate those projects, because there's obviously data. Like, we got to pull more data. We've got to put together some estimates for those other. And then the other issue is match. So we have an obligated match that drives up our match obligation too. So I have to look at balancing that, right? Because obviously, it's great to get, say, $7 million, but if you get a match 2 of it, we got to come up with $2 million, and where's that coming from? So, but you never leave free money on the table. We figure it out. So that's one big development. 2, Route 138, Ken knows that's ongoing. DOT's kind of moving through the process of, I think they're doing soil exploration right now?
Yeah.
Dave Palazetti reached out, trying to get a meeting with RIDOT, with the town and URI to have kind of a coordinated strategy on our approach to pushing for some of the enhancements and realignments and things like that, as opposed to being in silos, really trying to make sure our voice is heard while not trying to also sink the project, right? There's a fine balance of where they're, I think where I sit on it is, I feel like they want input to a point, but then don't want input. It's like, we've got to get a project done. So I think we're going to have to straddle that line between providing constructive input and then understanding that a project's got to get done. So hopefully we can come together on that. As far as other stuff, high school continues on. CCMS, you're going to start seeing that come down. So that'll be a big one. We talked about that last meeting, about those connections and whatnot. So keep your eye on those. I don't want to take up too much airwaves. So do you have any specific questions of the town on stuff going on?
No, your discussion of Kersey Road makes a lot of sense with the Safe Streets for All, because one of the 2 grants approved was the North Kingstown one for, I believe it was cameras on the buses to catch people who might pass a stopped school bus. And when you bring in the element of an elementary school, as a safety factor in the Safe Streets for All, plus the connectivity that provides from the school over to the bike path. Right. You have some enhanced transportation and safety items that one should catch attention.
That entire cut through, especially being such a major hub for URI commuter traffic, I think is a good project. So I'm hopeful that that'll gain some traction. One last thing, because I was literally working on it today. Tomorrow, an RFQ is going to go out, the design of High Street and Main Street. So Ben Robinson Square, that little area, and then Bell Block parking lot. So we're gonna be looking for a designer to design those two spaces, kind of take it to the next level.
Where's Ben Block?
So,
On the river behind the stores?
That's it,
Yes.
okay,
yeah, it's High Street and Main Street. You're you're talking Bell Block parking lot?
yeah,
Yeah, that's the one where the Riverwalk is.
okay,
Yeah.
okay.
So that one's, we have a $50,000 Rhode Island infrastructure grant for design work through a community projects fund for stormwater, water quality. That's the focus, but
Yeah.
obviously would require realignment of that parking lot and look, kind of reconfiguring that. So there's a lot going on around Main Street. On Monday night, I'm working to reallocate some funds from ARPA over to Saugatucket Park to add lighting in the Saugatucket Park. Over here. So that would be also a pedestrian aspect because lighting in that park changes the dynamic for both programming. So that would cover pedestrian lighting, electric improvements, because we've had issues like we got a new Christmas tree. We didn't have it. We had to run a cord to the school, which is soon to be demolished. So getting electric there and also getting water access, because I'd like to run irrigation like to the potted plants across the bridge
Yeah.
and things like that. So that, we'd also reallocate some funds to the playground. Playground needs to be upgraded a little bit. So some of this was leftover funds from the facade improvement program where people either pulled out or just didn't use up all their funds. So we're trying to get it all reallocated and implemented because we have a December 31st deadline coming up. So we want to try to get some of these get projects done.
Jay just said, I went to town hall. And then he said, on my way. Does he think we're someplace else?
What's that? Where-
Jay just sent me a text
Oh,
and
maybe you
said,
meant to say I'm coming to town hall or something?
I went to town hall on my way. Okay. Okay, I'm just gonna say we're in conference room.
That's all I got. If you have any questions, let me know.
And the feed into the park leads me back to, I forget if it's an obligation of mine, but I'll bring it up again on the High Street, the access to get across it. Because if people want to get to the park, it's a state road, the lack of crosswalks I've brought up, and the intersections I mentioned last time, like key intersections like Allen's Avenue where you have the curb cut, which could allow, but there's no street directly across from it. So the state did not put crosswalks in unless there's a street direct and sidewalk directly across.
Yeah.
But there is a sidewalk that runs perpendicular.
Yeah.
That is the feeder. So that would be a reach out to DOT regarding.
Well, it could be, but it should be coordinated with the town, right? So I would say if you guys have a specific recommendation like that.
Provide the
right,
recommendation
as a
points.
group,
Okay.
I would say both recommended to council, because the other thing too is if you unilaterally use up our requests, I'll just put it out this way. They're receiving requests from the town as well. We have a
Sure.
lot of requests that you're not even aware about. We have, Rich and actually the chief sits on the State Transportation Committee.
Right.
As you know, you worked with them on this, for the 138 thing. If we have people just making requests to DOT, what if we're not in favor of that? Like, that has to be filtered to the chief. So, it's good to have that, like, advisory to council, right? Say, hey, this is what we're looking
Agreed.
at. And then we'll look at it. If the council agrees and says, yeah, we think this is a priority, take a look at it. We'll look at it and say, okay, is this something we should take? Because we may find, what, that's fine, but we have other, like, crossings, or we might, Rich might have a safety concern with it, I don't know. Or the chief, in which case, and we don't want to be at odds with each other, right? We don't want to be knocking
No,
heads.
what I'll take it as come back with the recommendations to this committee
Yeah.
for then drafting a recommendation to the town.
Sounds good.
Yeah, because I think what has happened before, like with South Road, is that, and I went right to the, because it was a safety issue, I went
Oh,
right to
South
the
Road and
police-
138.
Yeah, I went right to the police chief, because it was a safety issue.
Mike Marin referred
And
us to
then
go to the
he was
police
the
chief.
one that said, well, let's bring it to the
The state.
state.
Yeah.
And I guess, I don't know, because it was a state road, I don't know, I'm sure Rich was involved, Rich Bourbonnais, but.
We brought it there, and then they had to do their safety study
Yeah,
with
right,
their
Right,
recommendations.
but we didn't go outside of the town or anything. We
No,
went
the
right-
chief
we-
was aware. and
Yes,
involved.
yeah,
You know.
and
Okay.
that's.
There's no one set process.
Right.
My goal is if we do create this transportation sort of advisory committee, those requests would first come into that. So there would be a formal funnel to start taking in those and saying, we think this. Then we can decide, all right, is this a town thing? Or we may take it to council. We may say, you know what, this is something that we want to see if the council wants to make this a priority or not. Because we get a lot of requests. We got to balance all the push-pull.
Okay, great, thanks. Well, welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Snuck right in.
We just finished the staff report.
Wonderful.
So, and we'll bump you up here, staff report. So it's a new business. It's an
New
old
old
business.
business.
Old
item.
business.
I didn't.
5B.
I missed something happened here. So on that one.
We'll share
so
this
anyway, no, I'm good. But so anyway, Council Member Wedgemont, Jay is here to help us discuss the escape plan. So we're 4 people, and we've looked at, how are we going to even begin to tackle something like this? And we just kind of want to get your thoughts on what you see, how we might move forward with it, who we need to get in touch with, how it would be funded, and that sort of thing. What are your thoughts?
Well-
I mean, you've obviously been thinking about it, so we want to know what you've been thinking about.
Well, I appreciate you having me here today, Dorothy, and I find, don't tell anybody else, shh, it's my favorite committee, right? Because of how important I think that the change that you're looking for is to our town. Pedestrian, vehicle, and non-car driving around is going to be the future of this town, and how we plan for a really safe community. And the work that you've done on this committee is super important. And so it's great that I'm here to talk about the escape plan. It was referred to the committee probably last year, right? I think. And as you know, it's a plan that doesn't have at this moment actual guidance from a third party that can actually give us data on this. It's more of something I did in my master's program to showcase how we can really try to reconnect our tradition in South Kingstown of being able to ride safely to our shores, right? If you look at the Waterfront Advisory Committee and some of the parallel tracks that they've made on trying to reopen Marina Park to pedestrian and rider access, I think that is a great partnership that this committee can work with to try to work with our town officials, planning department, and really coordinate a plan on how we can maybe focus on the pedestrian and rider access to Marina Park, to then build on that to expand it down Route 1 in some capacity, off of either Pond Street or in another safe area. The one thing about this plan, which is important, is that I am not set in the plan of where things should go, because I'm not an expert on making bike paths, So I would say that if this committee is interested in reviewing the plan that I had, making adjustments to it and recommendations that the council can then look at and recommend to the town manager's office to allocate what should happen after that, whether that's a study from a third party or whatever the suggestion of the council is, then that's where we can go with that. In the plan, if we are going off of Pond Street.
As he zooms in on that question, when you did come to this committee, I think you presented some aspects from the master's proposal that you had. And I think we needed that structure back to see what your concept was, because I don't recall having the actual proposal. Was it distributed?
We have it, but we don't have. You were pointing out, you knew about some different ways that
Absolutely.
potentially we don't have that. But go ahead and
So we're going to go a
here's-
little south.
So we've got,
And we can zoom out a little bit, yeah.
yeah,
So if we look on our right now, we have Marina Park in
By-
the bay right there.
by 210.
That's right.
Yeah.
Right.
So one of the most important parts about this is that bridge right there that connects the river to Salt Pond. That would be a feature of building a bridge there in the future if we were to have the route not be from Pond Street but to be the Marina Bay. That's my thoughts about that.
So are you thinking underneath Route 1, a bridge underneath
Are
that?
you talking about here?
So that would be
Here?
that would be if the that's right
Yeah.
there
Yeah.
or wherever is appropriate.
Because you can come underneath of Route 1
And-
here,
Right, but
Yeah.
you are stuck and you cannot get over to.
then you can't get over here.
That's right.
So you can get here,
hmm
and then, so we need something here.
Right, but the proposal that I wrote, which is also on my website, and was a part of the agenda when it was proposed to the town council, is this plan which I'm about to talk about. So, Luke, could you go? Can I have the mouse, maybe? Thanks, buddy. All right, so let's see.
That's Saugatuck River, right?
That is.
Okay.
So this right here is the last portion of town road before you can, where you can safely cross Route 1 without having to cross the highway, right? This exit is the exit that goes to Tuckertown. And of course, you could get on the highway here, but again, you do have to cross the highway into Matunic or South County Hills at some point. Now, we all know that we don't have traffic lights on this part of Route 1, so people do ride their bikes and walk occasionally. Couple access points here. 1A, Old Post Road, is a great road that will connect, that people use already to get off the highway, right? Now, this is Spartina Cove. This is Pond Street. There is, if you can see right here, a line that goes across, and I believe that is owned by the power company. Now, it's my understanding that the bike path we have right now is done off of the old train tracks, and I would say that having some sort of utilization of, actual, it's already cut down, you can see from satellite, right? It's thinner than everything else.
Are there actual lines, power lines?
There's power lines that go basically in this direction. But I believe that it's just access road, so the folks can, get back there with a truck. And so it's my understanding that some of this is all beyond Spartina Cove. Some of this is actually just power companies, right? Over here is something called the Undivided. So it's about 14 acres. It's old land. And you can safely enter Matunic through South County Hills. This is the second part of where we'd need some sort of, bicycle and pedestrian signage so people could walk safely. But if we all know, you can enter near the farm stand over here, go into Kettle Pond, or the other one right here, down Victoria Lane, down Succotash Road, past my old house. That's my old house right here. Just saying.
Thanks for this.
Just a little tip.
Do you miss it?
I do. And then you can access through East Matunic State Beach, through the cutaway here, go back onto Matunic
Right.
Beach Road, and you're down and accessing something that 300 years of South Kingstown people have been able to do safely without getting killed on Route 1. So as an escape plan, it's everyday South Kingstown access path. The idea is to just be able to connect our South Shore to people in town. If it was my suggestion, after hearing all of your reviews, suggestions, deletions, takeaway that you suggest to the council, I believe it would just probably be hire a third party to review any of this and suggestions of BPAC and to say, is this possible? If so, how much would that cost? Are there associated grants like public access grants for DEM or open open land grants. How do we do that?
Yeah, I think to your point, if I could jump in, I think that high-level screening of like who owns what, what's the disposition of the land, find out title ownership, if it's the utility company, just understand if it's uncovered in any other way. Utility companies, you can work with them. They're monopolies for reasons. They're not easy to work with. And also look at the environmental, cultural, historical potential resources in the area as, you know, the future entitlements, you know, what's going to trip you up. Because we can all sit there and I'm with you. I followed the vision. I'm like, yep, we can build that, we can build that, we can do that. But then it's, well, who owns the property and what are the entitlement agencies that you need to petition? So CRMC, Rhode Island DM, the utility companies are probably going to be pinged here. I don't know how many private roads are out here as well. So you want to just, I would say at a high level, kind of screen those boundary conditions, and then you can kind of narrow your focus and go through some alternative analysis. From a traffic perspective, it's, I think, you know, broadly defined, you've captured it. It's the dense population in the Wakefield, Peacedale area. People can generally get there through existing means, the bike path or other safe means, and then if they can reasonably get into town, then really what you're saying is, okay, this is how you get to the shore. So
How to, and also just connecting the different neighborhoods.
Right.
Because right now, like you, for Succotash, you have to go, if you wanted to go over to Sag, is it, I'm not as familiar with it.
Thank you.
Pond Street, you'd have to go out and down and around and flip around and then, well, no, maybe not Pond Street, but some of them, it just seems like from, you know, it's nice to off-road, off Route 1, be able to get from one neighborhood to another.
That's right.
Now, so Pond Street, like as far as it being a bike route, I mean, I haven't biked it, but were you hoping that whatever route it would be safe for families? Is that
I do. I think that if you look, could you scroll down a little bit? So as you may not be aware.
that part of Pond Street? Yeah, but coming across and coming under.
So I think that the most dangerous parts of it are right when folks are getting off of the highway, off of going south. Right there.
Yeah.
That's the most dangerous part. But again, you know, I've ridden my electric bike from my house in Wakefield to the Mist, and the safest way for someone that bicycles is to get off of the Tuckertown exit right there, ride down. If you jump into the side streets over there that are off of Route 1 on the right side, you can get a lot of safe riding for a while. And then eventually you have to cross Route 1 near Matunic.
How do you do that?
Just waiting for traffic, putting your hand out near the Beverly Hale Library is a safe place to do it. But you just have to take it slow and put your arm out and do the right signals. Again, but that's my whole point of this plan. It's not safe, right? It's not safe. You know, God forbid you're riding your bike, you hit a little rock and you fall, and there's a car coming that's not looking.
Understand your point, though. Coming from Main Street down Pond Street, it's narrow, hills, and winding. So I think your concept is the feeder roads have to also be viable as safe routes for the individual. So it's points to be reviewed and to be shared with the town council, because the use of a third party, we'd have to give some structure as to what a viable route would be.
Is this a bike path for, you know, adults that are used to riding on the side of the road, or do we want it to be something that's more like the bike path, where it's a way for families, for high school students to get to the beach, to Town Beach, to Lifeguard, or into
I think
the beach?
what I heard from you, though, is you're open to whatever, right? I think the ideal might be, you know, the bike path, right? That's all our ideals, right?
Yeah.
Off route,
Right,
safe.
right.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, in the fact that that couldn't happen, I think we'd rely on a third party to come back and say, all right, you don't have that tiered option, so here's your other options.
Mhm.
Right.
Yeah, actually, I
No.
amend that and say that that's for pure, I'm just gonna go ride for 10 miles, right? But ultimately, there's an origination and there's a destination. So you have to consider the neighborhoods as that's the destination or origination, and then there's a place to go to the beach or go to a park or go shopping or whatever. So yeah, I think you'll find those linear corridors that are aligned with public rights of way, utility rights of way. There's not a ton of them, and that's like the highest order. This is safe passage, there's no vehicles. What's interesting is when you start mixing in the other existing town-owned streets and state-owned streets, then it's kind of a judgment call. How connected do we want to be? Does the neighborhood want to be? And what's the speed of vehicles in the area? So sometimes you end up solving two problems. You make a connected cross-town network, but you're also slowing traffic down where you've got demonstrated, documented, excessive speeds that kill people. We've seen this before in Middlebridge and other parts of town. So yeah, I think a structured analysis of those opportunities, the highest order, a dedicated bike lane, but then let's look at the existing surface street network and weave together. What really makes it optimized is when you start linking those small neighborhoods or shopping areas together, and people, they get it. It's like, oh, now I get it. I don't have to jump in my car. I can actually safely get to Brickley's. I can get to the beach. I can get to wherever.
Absolutely.
I'm sorry.
No, please, absolutely.
No, to that point, I just want to point out something that, and the councilman knows this because, he worked on the CIP, but Mike Stack has done a good job as harbor master NRO. And, he talked to Jim and I a couple of years ago about, boy, we don't have transient slips right now. And trying to get people from Marina Park to Main Street. And I think the reason I bring this up, I think it dovetails well with the escape plan, is that his initial thought was to build some sort of walkway under the bridge. And the pie in the sky, right? If you take a marker and you run it right up the river, you get to Main Street. Like, is there a way to have a dedicated path all the way to Main Street that kind of takes those who are not familiar with the area, who aren't bikers, who are more pedestrians, take them on safe passage? So we've looked, we started looking at that. Obviously, the council took action to take these slips back starting next year. They've exercised a 1-year extension, but after that, town will take this back and those will become town slips. The other thing we've looked at is Town Farm. I actually did a design that just shows an overpass, right? For a grant that we went for. And again, big marker ideas, but could you get over there? The question is, all right, where do you go from there?
Right.
Because now you're on Kenyon. Kenyon's tough, just like Pond. How do you get them from here to there? But I bring that up because we had 50,000 in CIP this year. And this committee obviously can advocate to bolster that. This could dovetail as part of a larger plan, so you could have two sections of the plan. One more focused on Marina Park, but then you could have an escape sort of focus plan that encourages those two to kind of dovetail together as part of a larger long-term plan. I mean, this might be a 20, 30-year plan, right? You chip away over time and funding. But you have to kind of lay out that big vision and then you back into it as, you picture it, that big marker, and then you back in the subcomponents. All right, we're going to do this section. As you've seen over in Narragansett, one small section can take a long time. So,
What did they pay the consultant? Do you remember? Wasn't it over 100,000 in Narragansett
probably.
for different
Yeah, I mean,
routes
something like
to
this
go
would be a few
a mile or
$100,000
less than
in
a mile?
planning effort by the time you're done, depending on level of effort. If you're getting into deed research and looking at, deep weeds, the bigger vision is less expensive because that's the easy part, right? You drill big markers and you're like, here's the vision.
Yeah.
The weeds is where it really gets expensive, as Ken can attest to.
I think that, the higher level, let's take your concept and see the higher level what those opportunities are. And that makes sense.
To build off of what Luke was saying, I think that this committee working with the Waterfront Advisory Committee and Mike Stack is going to be really great to have a holistic vision there. Because, Dorothy, you brought the point. It's a little iffy on Pond Street right there, right? Well, if we redo, what is that called again? No, but not Marina Park, but
Split?
Farm.
Farm Park.
Oh, Town Farm.
Town Farm, where I used to play as Damon's Hardware baseball. But yeah, so if we do that, then that's where you could possibly have a safe bridge to begin the escape path, right? And I think that you brought it up. What do we want it to be? Do we want it to be a bike path? Do we want it to be a path for everybody? Dream team is you can take your baby stroller and walk to the beach and walk home. I think it would be an economic engine for this town. You get to walk into town and then walk back. Imagine it. That's what I imagine. And like Luke said, it's not an overnight thing. It's something that I'm excited to try to nudge in the right direction. And I'm really excited for your subject matter expertise on this so we can chip away at it, like Luke said.
One more element at the marina, you mentioned that as a hub to bring business into town too. For those who wouldn't walk, although it's not the same as in Providence, but if you could have something like a city bike terminal there too, people would come in on their boats. Can then
Absolutely.
actually
Yeah.
rent a bike to get into town and then back out.
Absolutely.
A lot of people who have boats and live on boats have little electric bikes that they keep with them.
Get around town.
I've had a 91 whaler in Salt Pond for 30 plus years. Folks are looking for transient parking,
Oh.
and to be able to jump and go get some lunch at 2:10 and hop back on their boat and drive home.
Okay.
Which is exciting, right? Like, it's an exciting thing. The only way you can, honestly, right now, the only way you can park your boat and go on there is if you know someone you can raft up to.
Just too bad because there is opportunity there for economic.
And so, as you work on your recommendations, if you need me to come back to this committee and listen
So-
before it's submitted to the council, happy to do that.
One thing that I think that we would love to ask of you is if you know of anyone who wants to be part of the committee.
I actually do.
We would love extra help with this because this is a big project.
I know.
This is a huge project, so the more people, the merrier.
I think
And-
Dorothy's been in attendance at town council meetings when I've been. And if you want to join the Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Committee,
You said you have somebody, so rather than volunteering live, if you want to offline, tell us them and we can do some outreach that way.
absolutely.
Yeah.
He wants to get coffee with me before that, but it's someone I went to high school with. So, and they,
Yeah.
him and his
And-
girlfriend just bought a house about a year ago in South Kingstown, and might be ready to go. Putting you on the spot, buddy. Sorry.
Well,
Okay.
just come to the meeting.
Yeah.
You know, just come to me. You don't have to join, right? You just come.
He's a
See
good
what
dude.
it
You know,
is.
that's what we've been
Absolutely.
advocating. People just come.
One of my things as a town council member is I've really been trying to push for more members into the committees and like appointing those, and working with Nicole Romaine and our now Emily Hool it's been pretty good. We've been trying to push it, but again, y'all need some help, and I'm gonna try to help that.
We can have up to 9.
Right.
So we need 5 more.
I'm trying.
Yeah.
Councilman, just so for clarity to the committee, right, you put this in their bucket. At some point, it's got a slingshot back to the council with whatever it is, right? So specifically, we talked about, maybe recommendation on third party, things that this committee could do to maybe supplement the work to keep costs down, or we talked about deed research. That'd be one that could be done, or, high-level planning, things like that. Like, what are you expecting? What's your anticipation of what comes back and when?
Today is April 10th, right?
9.
Ninth.
9th,
Yep.
excuse me. Perhaps in June, if you could have early June, you could have a recommendation, or I could come back and hear your recommendations and sit on the meeting and see what you want to do with that. I think that Luke some of the deed research, could an hour or so be spent by our team at the town hall to look at some of like the properties over there? Would that be, or would that not be?
To be blunt, no.
Okay.
The deed research is substantial when you get into this type of deed research,
Yeah.
because they may have easements within the deeds. There might be stipulations like this could be hundreds of hours of deed research. You look at all those properties. So, I think first thing you need to do is figure out all the routes and
Right.
figure out what properties.
And then ownership.
And then you've got to, and then I think if this vision I would have, just based on my planning experience, the way I've done it before is, you know, and Ken, feel free to chime in. You take the big marker concepts. What are the potential routes, right? And then you identify what parcels might have to bridge over, right, beyond public ways. And then you would narrow those down. That's the point at which, if the committee wanted to be involved as far as, you know, pulling some of that data, maybe looking at some of that data, or it could be the third party. But I think there's components that this committee could take pieces of, but you all work for a living and you have lives and things. So I think you have to do a bite size. So that component alone could be substantial, depending on how many properties you bridge. If it's a couple, no big deal. If it's a dozen and they're big and there's, you know, it's mucky, then we'd really have to look at it.
There's quite a few parcels that are South Kingstown Land Trust along the route.
Those are
Do you think
discussions.
they would be open to allowing for a bike path to go from anybody's experience?
Yes and no, depending on the limit of what was agreed upon in the deed. You know, for example,
Restricted use.
right. I mean, a lot of South Kingstown Land Trust properties, you have to even use it, you have to be a nonprofit if they wanted to host something. But you can't just be a private citizen and host it in a lot of the properties. But that doesn't mean that we can't reach out to them. And I think that my recommendations, or what do I expect, would be if the committee could review the escape plan. We can send it over again.
Yeah.
And then maybe come up with maybe a 5 to 7 recommendations from that, which are plausible, which are, or what direction you think that is plausible, which direction that the plan doesn't address, and then possibly between now and June, inviting Mike Stack to come in and talk about the Marina Park plan and how the alignment of this committee and that committee could, you know, join to give a good recommendation to the council about a good plan.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I thought I had heard earlier that that we would have, that the part of the planning with routes and would kind of fall more onto a consultant towards.
Yeah, I think
Yes.
that's what the council is
Okay,
saying. Is Part
okay.
of your recommendations could be supporting, because it's
Okay.
a 5-member team up there,
Right.
right? So a third party would have to be funded. So I think coming to the council and saying, listen, this would need a third party.
Okay.
We would recommend funding that. These are the things, so you just made this point, right? What are the things that you want that consultant to look at? Right? What are the considerations as you're planning, and what are the things that maybe are and aren't in the escape plan?
Okay.
Fill in some of those holes to say, all right, we recommend you hire a consultant. Here's the things they should be looking at, and here's how we approach it. And you know, then the council can say as a group, you know, do we want to make this a priority and fund it? You know, and maybe we go for bigger dollars next year through a CIP if the council said, yes, this is a priority, we want to do it. There's a lot of weighted priorities, right? As you well know.
Right.
It's a lot. So, you know, if this is a priority and the town manager knows that, he's more apt to put it in his budget to say, okay, well, put a little bit more this way.
Or maybe Rhode Island DEM is offering a
Yeah, or
grant
grants.
that looks like it could be something applicable for a portion of it. And I think that having that meeting with Mike Stack will be important to say, hey, the Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Committee is interested in making Marina Park a more pedestrian and rider safety, or safer, right? And that might spur his committee to say, wow, we should work on a co-recommendation, or not, right? I don't know.
Yeah.
But I think that very simply just 5 to 7 recommendations that we can go over and report back to the council.
For the benefit of those in the room, I'm looking that the council meeting is going to start in about 5 minutes.
Okay.
I gotta go.
You better go.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Absolutely,
Thanks.
absolutely.
And Luke, I assume you'll have to join. Can we move to adjourn and put the remainder of the agenda onto the next month's meeting?
Yeah, I think that's fine. I think that the only other thing, the only thing,
Inventory, the bike path crossings was the thing that we were,
yeah, we can. I shared with Luke
I'll go through it.
what I did here. Oops, excuse me. So, and I'll share this. I can send this to you, but this this is what we did. We did it on a
Yeah.
black and white sheet, and then I
Yeah.
just transferred it over here.
I remember
Because-
doing that.
Okay, and then I just did a write-up, and I'll send
Okay.
that to you.
Okay.
So, and Luke's going to tell me, before we go any further, if this is what he wants.
No, it's
And-
a good
and
idea.
what you-
I'll
and-
look at it, I'll give you
yeah.
some recommendations, because
Yeah.
that might even, be able to whittle it down so you don't have to be so extensive on your verbiage, like,
Yeah, I
make it
just,
easier for you.
I didn't know whether you needed each,
I appreciate the
Sign.
work. It's helpful, so.
and the photos.
Yep, yes,
That's a
so
lot
you
for-
showed those to me.
Yeah.
I did get them, so I'll
Okay.
download those in the folder and.
Yeah, so I mean, I don't know, do you need to share photos with the state? Or is that
I'd
just
like
for us
have
to
them
kind of see?
in Arsenal,
Okay.
so that when we communicate, like if there's something that's not done or we're requesting, like it's nice to have those photos to say, here's what we're thinking. So it is nice that while you're out there, take a bunch of photos,
Okay.
put them in a folder, and I'll grab them. It's very helpful to me.
Okay, alrighty. Okay, doke.
No, this is extremely helpful because this is time, which I don't have.
Okay. Alrighty. Okay. Anybody else have things that they want to discuss, or we'll just move some things on to the next meeting in May?
Were there any other applicants, or do we have anybody that was kind of pending?
I haven't reached back out to Josh Saunders.
Okay.
He indicated that he was going to come back,
Mhm.
but I haven't, I was kind of leaving it for him, so I don't know. And Eric Axelrod, I haven't heard from him. I don't think he's, I don't think he's interested. So. I
By
think
next
he'd be-
meeting, I'll have had to reach out to the PTO from all the elementary schools to see if I'm getting feedback from there, if they're interested parties for, again, school area, but parental child, and also if there are any disabled committees, subcommittees in the PTOs. that
Yeah.
Might be able to give another
I'm
perspective.
gonna, I'm gonna talk to Jim and see if we want to pull a newspaper ad. They're cheap enough to maybe do not just your group, but just put something in. SK is recruiting for boards and commissions. I don't
Yeah.
think, we haven't really done that in a while. It might be, this community tends to like the paper, and it's another way than just throwing it up on a website. So at least do a little bit more towards recruiting.
Yeah, Lisa Beth and I had toyed with maybe on our town Facebook page putting something, but that's always, as Ken knows, iffy. You never know. People can come down on you at
The
the
commentary.
least suggestion of doing anything
Okay.
positive.
You can always not comment back.
Right, that's true.
There's always- sometimes that's the best strategy.
Yes, you're right.
Why we don't
You're
comment
right.
back.
So anyway, I will not be here for the May meeting, but I'll be working on some of this in between, obviously. And I will get, Luke, I'll get the BPAC's letter of support for Safe Streets for All.
Yes.
And if you
Yeah,
want
yeah,
to
others.
provide,
I'll give you a template.
okay,
Yeah,
because I have
include
what
some
I
of those
did
other
before,
projects.
but it just had Main Street.
Yeah.
So let me know what else.
We'll get you a revised template, and
Okay.
yeah, that's great.
Okay, so, does anybody want to make a motion?
Motion to adjourn.
Okay,
Second.
okay, all in favor? Aye. Aye, okay, so be it, and it is 7 PM. Excellent, okay.
And the May meeting is on the 7th or 14th?
I think it is the 14th.